Hey kiddos, so yesterday we talked about the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, and Herbert Hoover's presidency, and as well as the effects that they had on the American society. Today we're going to talk about the New Deal, which was composed by President FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We'll get into what that consisted of and how it impacted the American people. So, we talked about how Herbert Hoover was not very well received by the American people. So, they, of course, rejected him, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt was voted into office. And one of the things that helped him to really be embraced by the American people was the New Deal. And this was his plan to help end depression and pull America up by their bootstraps and pull them out of this funk that they were in, both socially, politically, and economically. So the way that he planned to do this was through relief, recovery, and reform. So he wanted to help them immediately and give them a chance to really breathe. He also wanted to help them recover, not just put a band-aid on it, but to be able to fully get out of that slump that they were in and provide the necessary reforms and legislation to ensure that these changes would help them and not continue to impact them in the future. So here are some political cartoons to show you what was occurring during the time of the New Deal. So on the right, you see that FDR is shaking hands with the forgotten men. So he is, he's here to help every single person, the common men, the people that were being overlooked. He is the people's man. And then on the left, you see him with his New Deal program in his back pocket, on top of his half snail, half horse combination, running down the street to make these changes. So people were definitely anticipating the effects that he was going to have. So the 3R's, relief, recovery, and reform. So what's important to know is that it definitely takes time to make these important changes. It's not just done overnight, and that is exactly how FDR's plan worked, because they came in three waves, because he was constantly trying new things and constantly putting things in place to make sure that all Americans were able to ensure that all Americans were able to feel the positive effects of the New Deal. So the first was the first 100 days. The second was the second New Deal, and the third was World War II mobilization. The first 100 days are extremely important because after a president is voted into office, people are wanting to know how their presidency will affect them and what they're going to do to during that time. So they kind of want to go ahead and see what those changes will look like. So they were watching him especially close during this time because they were desperate and they needed help, and they were depending on him to do just that. So one of the things that he put into place was the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, and this was extremely important because he was able to put hundreds of people to work by having them build dozens of dams around Tennessee, as well as power plants. So not only are people that were once unemployed now employed, and they're able to provide for their families, they're stimulating the economy, which will help multiple aspects of the American society to increase, but he was also controlling the environment by preventing floods through those dams and bringing electricity to regions that had never experienced that as well. So there were three huge positive effects that the TVA was able to help people. Here are some maps to kind of just show you where the TVA's impacts were. Another big thing that was put into place was the Wagner Act. So we talked about the AFL and how it was able to help a lot of workers during the time of industrialization. But after people were starting to get laid off from work, and through the 1920s pro-big business presidents and the Red Scare, they started to kind of suffer and dismantle. So the Wagner Act was put in place to make sure that workers' rights were protected and that employers weren't able to use any abusive tactics on their employees. So the Congress of Industrial Organizations was formed to help ensure that labor unions were protected, and they were able to give the unions the ability to then protect all of the workers and the American people. Next up is the Social Security Act, which passed in 1935, and it was a part of the Second New Deal. And through the Social Security Act, there were three important programs. The first one was the old age insurance. So this helps protect the people that are of older age so that when they get to a certain age, they're able to retire and still have the ability to take care of themselves. The second is unemployment compensation. This is huge because we talked about how unemployment got to the point where it rose to 25%. And people were out of work, and when they were out of work, there was nothing there to protect them. But now people were able to collect unemployment pay while they were in between jobs as a way to kind of hold them over and give them some kind of relief financially. And the next one was financial aid for the disabled. If people are disabled and they were no longer able to work, they were now given stipends to help them to be able to maintain some sort of lifestyle. And these are extremely important because they're very relevant still today. You will deal with old age insurance when you get a little older. If you lose your job, you are able to collect unemployment compensation. And for those who are unfortunately hurt and disabled, they are able to collect financial aid that will help them to continue to maintain their lifestyle or an aspect of their lifestyle, because it's not a full amount of money, but it is something to help protect them. So this gives you a list of all of the different New Deal aspects that were put in place under FDR. So if you look at all of the different plans here, you see that he made a point to really ensure that every different part of the American society was protected. So he was giving people jobs. He was making sure those workers were now protected. He was making sure people that could not work were protected or did not work because they were laid off, they were protected. He was making sure that banks are protected because people that put their money in banks lost all their money. Those banks went under. Businesses were going under. He was wanting to make sure those businesses were protected. He was making sure that our farms were protected, so people are still able to get food, and people are able to recover from things such as the Dust Bowl, as well as homeowners were now able to be protected as well. So as influential as FDR was, his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, was just as important. She was the first very influential and vocal first lady. She is known to be a humanitarian, and she led a lot of social progress here in the United States. She would actually travel all over the United States and then tell FDR what she saw and press him to make decisions and put things in plan to make sure that everyone around the country was positively impacted. So she wanted to make sure that he was doing what he could to really help every single American in the country, and that is what made her a gem. So she was definitely extremely special. She not only was helping with politics, she was helping with the economy, and most importantly, she was helping to make sure that the social aspects of the American people around the United States were not only heard, but that they had the ability to get the reform and the necessary changes to uplift them. So although a lot of people were super excited about FDR and really believed in what he was doing, he did have some opposition. So conservatives felt that he was too large, he was making the government too strong, he was doing too much. And liberals, on the other hand, were thinking that he wasn't doing enough. So where's the happy medium? There's always going to be naysayers and people that think that you're not doing enough or you're doing things wrong and yada, yada, yada. But he did what was right, what he felt what was right for the United States and the people that live here, and he continued to follow through and do just that. Huey Long, however, was one of his biggest critics. He felt that all of the wealth shouldn't just be given to a certain select few people. It should be distributed amongst everyone, and that would make sure that every single American is able to get a job, they're able to become educated, they can get home, food, and clothes. So it should eliminate poverty altogether. Here are some pictures of him on the left of Mr. Huey Long, and you can see through this graph on the right and the left column with the purple. This shows the federal deficit. It's written in billions of dollars. And on the right is the unemployment, which is written in millions of people. Okay, here's another graphic to just show you what was happening. So you see the bottom two tiers basically compose what would be considered regular people. So this is your upper middle class and comfortable middle class in this green color, and then at the bottom in the orange are the people that are getting by and impoverished. So you see that as much as you have middle people, you have these people who, you have your big time CEOs and entertainers right here that are just kind of above the upper middle class, and then all the way at the top you have your super rich people such as Rockefeller and Gates rich. Okay, that's the Andrew Carnegies, the Cornelius Vanderbilts, all of these people with this enormous amount of wealth. He felt that it should pretty much be cut in half. So we should eliminate the orange tier. There should be nobody that is impoverished, and then we would just have a comfortable middle class, upper middle class, and everybody would be able to share their wealth, and the American people, everybody would be able to flourish. Everybody could have a seat at the table. Okay, so something else that FDR did that did not go over very well was he tried in 1937, he tried to restructure the Supreme Court. He wanted to add in supporters of his programs to make sure that they would not be in jeopardy, they would continue to flourish, and he could continue to pass the reforms that he felt were necessary. However, Congress did not meet those demands. It did not work out, and then it was actually seen as a court packing scheme because he was trying to enter people to help pass his legislation, which is not necessarily the best way to go about doing things. Right, so here is a political cartoon on your note sheet. I want you to go through and answer these 6 questions as you analyze this political cartoon. You can pause the video here so you are able to do that. Also, make sure that you are writing your summaries so that way you can stay on top of your notes and you're able to recall this information later on if you need the information, which you will. And I also encourage you to go through and highlight the most important parts. We will be working on a study guide later on in the week, so make sure that you are getting these things done and let me know if you have any further questions.